Thank you for tuning in to leaddeveloper.com, where we simplify complex property development feasibilities, investment analysis, and everything real estate. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, our Google Sheets-based feasibility suite streamlines the toughest aspects of real estate. Lead Developer Feasibility Suite is trusted by thousands in over 17 countries. Our tools cover everything from quick assessments to detailed cash flow projections and more. Sign up today at leaddeveloper.com for unlimited free access to our expanding library of real estate tools. No credit card needed. Plus, get full support through Edge with step-by-step guidance, exclusive courses, and resources designed for your success. Turn numbers into narratives that win over investors and lenders. Join Lead Developer now.
All right, let's dive into the world of commercial real estate development. Have you ever, thought about making some passive income through property? Well, today we're going to take a deep dive and give you the knowledge to do just that. We're going to be looking at excerpts from the website, Commercial Development 101, Become an Expert. And by the end of this, you'll be able to impress even, the most seasoned developer and be able to make a much more informed decision about whether this is the right path for you.
Yeah, we're going deep into the strategies and insights that can really make a difference.
So let's just start with the basics. What exactly is commercial development? I feel like when most people hear that, they just think skyscrapers.
Yeah, skyscrapers are definitely a part of it, but it's a lot more than that. Think of it as the entire process of creating spaces where businesses can thrive, from the initial planning all the way to securing tenants and managing the property.
So it's not just about the construction.
Exactly. It involves a whole network of players, architects, financiers, contractors, and of course, local authorities, with zoning regulations and permits. In fact, those regulations can either make or break a project. So understanding them is really crucial.
So zoning and permits, big deal, got it. But let's move beyond the office blocks for a sec. What other types of commercial developments are out there?
Well, you might be surprised to learn that even a renovated house can be considered commercial development. Like imagine a residential neighborhood that gets rezoned. Suddenly that old house on the corner, that becomes prime real estate for like a doctor's office or a small law firm.
Wow, so even smaller scale projects, those can fall under commercial development.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great option for like owner-occupiers or investors who want to start small. Then you have things like office parks. They're becoming more and more popular, especially in suburban areas. Picture like low-rise buildings surrounded by greenery, offering a much more relaxed work environment.
That does sound appealing, especially compared to like the hustle and bustle of downtown.
Right. And then, of course, you have the different grades of office buildings, from Class A, with their high-end finishes and prime locations, to Class C spaces that are, more functional and budget-friendly. It all just depends on the type of tenant you're trying to attract.
Okay, so there's a whole spectrum of possibilities there.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about why someone would even want to get into this world. What's the big draw of commercial development?
Well, one of the biggest things is the potential for higher returns compared to residential real estate. Plus, you often get like the benefit of economies of scale. By developing a larger property, you can maximize the leasable area, which boosts your income potential.
So it's about efficiency and maximizing those profits.
Exactly. And then there's also the appeal of landing what's called an anchor tenant. Imagine securing a lease with like a major company like Amazon.
Yeah.
That kind of stability can make a huge difference when it comes to cash flow.
Yeah, having a reliable tenant like that would be great.
For sure. And let's not forget about rental escalation clauses. These can be built into leases to protect your investment from inflation. So imagine having your rental income increase automatically every year to keep pace with rising costs. Pretty nice, right?
Okay, that does sound pretty amazing. But I'm guessing it's not all smooth sailing in commercial development. There's got to be some challenges, some risks involved, right?
Of course, it's important to be realistic about the potential downsides. For starters, you're going to need some significant financial capital up front. We're not talking about buying a single-family home. These projects require a substantial investment.
So this isn't something you just jump into lightly.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that negotiating with commercial tenants can be much more complex than dealing with, like, residential renters.
Yeah.
These are businesses that are looking out for their bottom line. So they'll often bring in lawyers and accountants to make sure they're getting the best deal.
Right. They're approaching it from a business perspective.
Yeah, exactly. You might also face costs related to tenant adaptations, like customizing the space to meet their specific needs. And don't forget about the ongoing management costs. which tend to be higher for larger properties. You might even need to hire a dedicated property manager.
Okay, so there are some substantial rewards, but also some potential risks. But let's say someone's ready to at least dip their toes into commercial development. What's the best strategy to get started?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It
Yeah.
really depends on things like your target market, your investment goals, and your risk tolerance.
Okay, fair enough. But let's assume that someone is in it for the long haul and they want to build a portfolio of, stable income-producing properties. What are some key things that they should consider?
Well, first and foremost, understanding your target market is absolutely crucial.
Mm.
What types of businesses are you trying to attract? What are their needs? What are their preferences? You need to do your research, analyze the market trends.
So it's like being a detective, gathering clues to figure out what the market wants.
Exactly. And remember, location is everything in real estate. A prime location can truly make or break a development.
Yeah, I can see how that would be crucial for attracting tenants.
Think about accessibility, visibility, proximity to transportation, and just the overall appeal of the area. These factors can have a huge impact on the success of your project. And once you have a potential location in mind, the next step is to do a thorough site analysis.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of that. What are some of the key things we should be looking for?
Well, you'll want to determine the land value and make sure the asking price is realistic. You can do this with a residual value analysis, which helps you estimate your profit when you eventually sell the property.
So it's not just about the initial price, you're also thinking long-term about the resale value.
Exactly. Then you need to dig into the town planning regulations. Are there any zoning restrictions? How long will it take to get the necessary approvals? These are crucial questions because delays can be very costly.
Time is money, especially in development. What other hidden costs might be lurking out there?
Well, the availability of bulk services like water, electricity, and sewage, that's another crucial factor. Are those readily available? Or are there going to be additional costs to connect to those services? You'll also want to check if the site has had a traffic impact analysis done. This helps you understand how your development will affect traffic flow and whether there will be any associated costs.
So it's about being aware of all those potential expenses before you commit.
Absolutely. And don't forget about those less obvious but equally important factors, like access for vehicles and pedestrians. Is it convenient? Is it well located? You don't want your tenants or customers struggling to get to the building.
That makes perfect sense. And what about neighboring structures? Do they play a role in site analysis?
Oh, absolutely. You want to make sure they are compatible with your planned development. For example, a noisy factory next door might not be the best fit. For a high-end office building, it's all about considering how the surrounding environment will impact the appeal of your property.
So site analysis is about a lot more than just looking at a piece of land. It's about understanding all the complexities and how those complexities will impact the project.
You got it. It's a crucial step that requires careful consideration and due diligence.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the market itself. Who are the key players in the commercial real estate game?
Well, the market is surprisingly diverse. You have everything from solo entrepreneurs and small businesses, all the way to massive corporations and government agencies. And each group has its own set of needs and preferences when it comes to office space.
So it's not just about building one type of office and hoping it appeals to everyone.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that price isn't the only factor that tenants consider.
Okay, so what else are they looking for besides a good deal on rent?
Well, things like unique amenities, special services, and that all-important prime location. Those can be major selling points. Think on-site gyms, cafes, or even daycare facilities. Those perks can make a big difference in attracting and retaining tenants.
It's about creating a space that enhances their experience.
You nailed it. Now, before we move on to the exciting world of design, we need to talk about market analysis. This is where we really dive deep into the numbers to understand the forces that are driving demand for commercial space.
All right, let's crunch some numbers. What does a thorough market analysis entail?
Well, it starts with forecasting employment figures. We need to anticipate the space requirements of different industries and understand how those needs might change over time. This involves looking at, national and local economic indicators, as well as shifts in employment structure, like the growth of service-oriented industries.
So you're not just looking at the present, you're trying to predict the future of the market.
Precisely. And we can't forget about the evolving utilization of commercial space, which is being influenced by, technology
Yeah.
and changing work patterns, especially the rise of remote work.
Yeah. The way people work is definitely changing, and that has a direct impact on the demand for office space. So it's crucial to consider all these factors to get a clear picture of what's driving demand.
You're absolutely right. A thorough market analysis is essential before committing any significant capital. It helps you identify opportunities, mitigate risks, and ultimately make more informed decisions.
Well, I feel like we've already covered a ton of ground, from the definition of commercial development and the range of possibilities, to the challenges, the rewards, and the key considerations for getting started. But we've only just scratched the surface.
You're right, there's so much more to explore. We still need to delve into the exciting world of design, explore the financial aspects of development, and unpack the intricacies of attracting and managing tenants.
All right, listeners, get ready for part 2, where we'll uncover even more valuable insights and practical advice. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into commercial development. I'm excited to continue our exploration, and I'm especially curious about the design aspect. What are some of the major considerations when planning a commercial space these days?
Well, flexibility and environmental consciousness are two of the most important pillars, of successful design in today's world. Okay, I like that. Let's start with flexibility. What does that look like in a commercial space?
Well, you're essentially designing for the future,
Yes.
not just the present. So that means creating spaces that can adapt, to the changing needs of businesses. Think open floor plans, movable walls, modular furniture. All these things allow for easy reconfiguration.
So you're future-proofing the space, making it adaptable to, whatever comes next. I like that.
Exactly. And speaking of the future, we can't ignore environmental considerations. Sustainability is, no longer just a buzzword, it's a necessity.
I totally agree. So what are some of the must-haves for an environmentally conscious commercial building?
We're talking about energy-efficient lighting and HVAC systems, water conservation measures, use of sustainable building materials. It's about reducing the environmental impact of the building and at the same time creating a healthier, more appealing space for tenants.
So it's a win-win, good for the planet and good for the people using the building. Are there any technical aspects of design that are especially important in today's world?
Absolutely. You need to think about adaptable acoustic systems, ones that can accommodate changing layouts, adjustable lighting levels for different tasks, and robust power, data, and communication infrastructure to support all the latest technology.
So it's like you're creating this high-tech, sustainable, and adaptable space that's ready for anything.
That's the goal. But let's not forget about the financial side of things. We need to talk about the factors that drive costs in commercial development.
All right, let's get down to brass tacks. What are some of the big cost drivers, beyond the obvious, like land and construction?
Well, one of the key factors is the economics of floor space. Developers are always looking to maximize what's called the leasable area, the space that can actually be rented out to tenants. So that means carefully considering the layout, the size of common areas, and the efficiency of the overall design.
So it's like a balancing act. You're trying to create a functional and appealing space, but also maximize every square foot.
Exactly. And that brings us to the concept of net leasable area versus gross floor space. So net leasable area is the space that tenants actually pay rent on, while gross floor space includes things like hallways, restrooms, mechanical rooms. Ideally, you want that net leasable area to be as close to the gross floor space as possible.
Right. The more rentable space you have, the better your return on investment.
Absolutely. Another important factor to consider is the external wall-to-floor area ratio.
Okay, that sounds a little technical. Break that down for me.
Basically, the more exterior wall you have relative to the floor area, the higher your construction costs are going to be. Exterior walls are simply more expensive to build than interior walls. So that means a simple rectangular building shape, that's going to be more cost-effective than a complex, multifaceted design.
Interesting. So sometimes simplicity can be more economical.
Exactly. And then there's the decision of whether to rely on artificial lighting and mechanical ventilation or incorporate, natural alternatives.
I'm guessing natural light and ventilation are almost always the better option, both for cost savings and for the people who use the building.
You're right. They can significantly reduce energy costs and create a much healthier and more appealing space for tenants. But incorporating those natural elements effectively, that does require careful planning and a thoughtful design approach.
So every decision has cost implications.
That's true. And don't forget about the structural system and how it impacts parking and circulation. For example, if you need to include underground parking, that will have a major impact on both the cost and the layout of the building.
Yeah, parking is always a hot topic, especially in cities where space is limited.
It's essential. but it comes at a cost. Developers have to carefully consider how much parking to provide and how it will affect the overall economics of the project.
So we've talked about site analysis, market dynamics, and the key considerations for design, but how do you actually get tenants into these incredible spaces you're creating? It's time to talk marketing.
You're right, we can't forget about that crucial step. Let's explore the world of commercial real estate marketing.
Okay, let's make these properties shine. How do you attract tenants in such a competitive market?
Well, the key is to tailor your marketing approach to the specific location, office type, and target users. We're not just selling square footage, we're selling a solution for businesses.
So it's about understanding their needs and positioning your property as the perfect answer.
Exactly. And certain locations naturally attract certain types of businesses. For example, if you're developing in a central business district, you're more likely to attract financial institutions, law firms, corporations, the types of businesses that thrive in that kind of bustling environment.
It's about being where the action is.
Right. But even if you're not in a prime CBD location, you can still highlight your property's unique selling points. Think accessibility, convenience, aesthetics, the quality of common areas. First impressions matter, so you really want to showcase the value that you're offering.
It's about creating that positive experience from the moment someone steps onto the property.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of those little extras, like fit-out allowances for carpets, partitions, interior finishes. Those perks can really sweeten the deal and attract tenants who are looking for a move-in ready space.
Yeah, those perks would be appealing. And of course, parking and nearby amenities are always high on the list.
Exactly. Your marketing materials should highlight all those features and benefits. You really want to paint a compelling picture for potential tenants.
Okay, so you've created this fantastic property, you've crafted this great marketing strategy, but before we start celebrating, we need to assess the financial viability of the project. How do developers determine if a commercial development is actually a worthwhile investment?
That's where feasibility analysis comes in. We use two main approaches: cash flow analysis and residual value analysis. So cash flow analysis projects the ongoing income and expenses of the property, taking into account things like rental income, operating costs, debt service. It helps you determine if the property will generate positive cash flow over its lifetime.
So you're looking at the ongoing financial health of the project. What about residual value analysis?
Residual value analysis focuses on the estimated value of the property at the end of its useful life, considering things like depreciation and potential appreciation. So this helps you assess your potential profit, when you eventually decide to sell the property.
So it's a two-pronged approach: short-term cash flow and long-term value.
Exactly. And don't forget to factor in those building-specific expenses like cleaning, security, on-site maintenance. Those things can add up over time.
You got to paint a realistic picture of the costs. Okay, so once you have a solid understanding of the financial viability, then it's time to think about tenant targeting, right?
Right. Securing those ideal occupants is key. And, blue chip tenants. Those large, stable companies with solid credit ratings, those are always at the top of the list.
They're like the gold standard. I can see why developers would prioritize them.
Yeah, they offer long-term income stability. And they minimize the risk of vacancies. Think government agencies, major corporations, well-established institutions. But of course, not every development can be filled with just blue chip tenants.
Right. So what about smaller businesses? Are they a viable option?
Absolutely. Smaller businesses can be fantastic tenants. But you do need to do your due diligence, conduct background checks, assess their creditworthiness, and really gain a good understanding of their business model and track record.
It's all about mitigating risk.
Exactly. And speaking of leases, that's another crucial aspect of commercial development that we need to unpack.
Okay, let's dive into the legal side of things. What are the essentials of a well-structured commercial lease? I know they can be a bit more complex than residential leases.
Yeah, you're right. Commercial leases are a bit more intricate. They cover a wider range of terms and conditions. Rental rates and payment deadlines, those are obviously fundamental. Establishing a fair market rent and a clear payment schedule. Then you have rental escalation clauses, which protect the landlord from inflation by linking rent increases to a fixed percentage or the consumer price index.
So the rent essentially keeps pace with the cost of living.
Precisely. Another crucial element is defining the use of premises. So this outlines what types of business activities are permitted in the space, making sure that the tenant's use aligns with the building's purpose and zoning regulations.
Makes sense. What about expenses? Who's responsible for things like utilities and maintenance?
That's outlined in the lease as well. Responsibility for expenses such as rates, water, and power. That's allocated between the landlord and the tenant to make sure everything is fair and transparent.
So everything's spelled out to avoid any confusion or disputes.
Exactly. The lease also covers things like the duration of the agreement, options for renewal or expansion, provisions for tenant improvements, and landlord rights for reconstruction and renovation. It's all about striking a balance between the needs of both parties, creating an agreement that's fair, clear, and enforceable.
Wow, we've really gotten into the weeds of commercial leases, but there's one big trend we haven't addressed, the rise of remote work, and how that's impacting the future of commercial development. That's a whole other layer of complexity.
You're right, it's a game changer we can't ignore. And in Part 3, we're going to tackle that very topic, exploring how commercial development is adapting to this new world of work.
Stay tuned, listeners, because we're about to uncover how developers are responding to this big shift in the way we work. Welcome back, listeners. We've covered so much in our commercial development deep dive, from site analysis and market dynamics to the ins and outs of leases. But now, let's talk about remote work. How is this massive shift changing commercial real estate?
It's a big one. It's really changing the traditional office as we know it, and developers have to adapt to new demands and expectations.
So are we saying goodbye to big office buildings? Is demand for office space just disappearing?
Not exactly. It's more like things are evolving, demand is still there, it's just changing. Companies want spaces that are more flexible, spaces that can handle hybrid work models. Think individual workstations, areas for collaboration, and high-tech meeting rooms. It's about making spaces for a workforce that's on the move.
So it's not just about how the space is laid out. It's about the whole environment, supporting this new way of working.
Right. Developers need to think about the amenities and services that will attract tenants in this new era. High-speed internet is a must, but it goes beyond that. We're talking top-notch video conferencing, comfy lounge areas, maybe even childcare or fitness facilities. You got to create a work destination that people want to be at.
Like combining the best of working from home and being in the office.
Exactly. And we can't forget about sustainability. It's super important for companies and investors these days. Developers who focus on energy efficiency, green building materials, and less waste are the ones who will get tenants and funding.
Good for the planet, good for the tenants, good for business.
Absolutely. And this focus on sustainability is pushing the industry to come up with new ideas. We're seeing cool technologies and approaches all the time.
Do you have any examples of projects that are doing this well?
Yeah, for sure. Have you heard of Ponce City Market in Atlanta?
I think so, but remind me.
It's a huge building. It used to be a Sears distribution center, but now it's a mixed-use development. Offices, shops, restaurants, apartments, even a rooftop park with, amusement park stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. It sounds like a place you'd want to spend time in.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a great example of how developers are being creative, repurposing old structures to make unique spaces that people love, and doing it sustainably.
What a great example of adaptive reuse. What about developments that are specifically for remote workers?
WeWork is a big one. Their co-working spaces are everywhere. But we're also seeing more specialized spaces. Some developers are building what they call work-near-home spaces. They're like suburban office hubs, so people don't have to commute downtown, but can still get out of the house to work.
That's smart. It's all about convenience and flexibility. Are there any projects that really stand out in terms of sustainability?
The Bullitt Center in Seattle comes to mind. It's known as one of the greenest buildings in the world. It makes its own energy with solar panels, collects rainwater, even has composting toilets.
That's incredible. It sets a high standard for green building. It sounds like there are a lot of exciting things happening in commercial real estate.
Absolutely. There's a big opportunity for people who want to be innovative and think differently.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway for our listeners who might be interested in this field?
Don't be afraid to break the mold. Things are changing fast, and there's a need for new ideas.
Whether it's adaptive reuse, designing for remote work, or being super sustainable, there's a chance to really shape the future of how we build.
Right. But don't forget the basics. Do your research, plan carefully, and know your target market. Those are still essential for success.
So if you're ready for a challenge and want to be part of the future of commercial real estate, go for it. And if you ever need a refresher, you know where to find us.
That's right. We covered a lot today, but there's always more to learn.
Thanks for joining us for this commercial development deep dive. Until next time.